What up, guys? You're here at Kobers Kustoms. This is your host, Xavier, talking. We're going to go ahead and go over this crazy build. This is a 2004 Mazda Rx-8 with a 2006 Mustang GT 4.6 liter 3-valve. It's paired up with a TR3650 manual transmission and driven by Holley's EFI Terminator X system. So, I'm going to try and go over everything I did to get this thing up and running. Again, to reiterate, this thing is completely stock. Everything on it is stock. There's not one aftermarket part on here except for this intake. That is the only aftermarket part. So, there's 4 different kits that you need to be looking at if you're running a 3-valve. First portion of it that you need to be looking at is you're needing a 2-valve kit. I have not tried the 4-valve. I haven't heard anybody using the 4-valve. I've heard the 2-valve is the way to go. So a 2-valve kit, you purchase that guy, and there's 4 different options for it. You can get the 2-valve kit with EV1 injectors, stock coils, a 2-valve kit with EV6 injectors and stock coils, a 2-valve with EV1 injectors and smart coils, or a 2-valve kit with EV6 injectors and smart coils. I'm stock. I have EV6 injectors with stock coils, so that's the kit I bought. The way you tell which injectors you have is how wide they are. The plugs on them are damn near the same. So these are EV6. They're skinny and long. EV1s are a bit rounder. You can definitely tell a difference when you're looking at them side by side. Again, these are stock coils, so I'm using those. I have my stock cam sensor down there. When you're doing this, you do have to get the phaser lockout kit. If you don't know what that is, definitely look it up. You're going to need it because the last thing you want to do is put this thing all the way in your car and then have to take the damn valve cover off again and take that cam gear out. Screw up all your timing. So, get the phaser lockers in there, and then on your phaser, you'll see 5 legs that stick out. You need to cut off all but one of them. If you look at it, and you look at it symmetrically, you'll see that there's one that kind of stands out, and the other 4 are kind of perfect from each other. Cut off those 4 and leave the one that's kind of weird in a weird spot by itself. And that one gives you the correct timing off this sensor to allow Holley's system to give you correct timing. Okay, so, like I said, stock EV6 injectors, stock coils, stock cam sensor. We're looking at our throttle body now. This is your throttle position sensor. This is obviously a cable-driven system. These Mustang motors come with a drive-by-wire system, which Holley does make an adapter kit that allows you to hook up the throttle body using drive-by-wire and your throttle, your electronic throttle in there. I didn't want to deal with the extra programming or the extra wiring configurations, so I went out and took this intake throttle body off a 2005 Lincoln Navigator, and it works perfect. I didn't have to really do any modifications other than slightly making these holes a little bit bigger, just that way the bolts lined up perfectly with the threads. Other than that, lined up, intake matted up to it. I had to do a little bit of a custom bracket to get the throttle on here, but it works great. It lines up, no issues. Throttle position sensor is the exact same. I hear you can also get an intake from a Cobra, 2003, 2004, but that's not what I did. Like I said, I got this from a 2005 Lincoln Navigator. Lincoln is made by Ford. Okay, after that, we're going to go ahead. This is one sensor I did have to go get off of the 2-valve motor. It is your intake temperature sensor. I drilled mine back here in the intake manifold. That way I get a little bit better of a reading. I hear you can use your MAF sensor, find the correct pins, and that'll allow you to get your intake air temperature. Since I am not using any other ECU, this is strictly just the Holley Terminator running this motor, I didn't install my MAF sensor whatsoever because I had no use for it since I was getting it all from just that sensor alone. There is an IAC sensor, your air intake, or idle air intake. That guy is basically, when the motor's idling and still warming up, it helps adjust your idle to keep it, within a couple RPMs, 10 RPMs, something like that. I don't have that. I just hid the wire back in my wire harness. I have no issues with idle. Thing runs great. After that, we're going to be looking down here at our crank sensor. Again, this is the completely stock crank sensor down there, right in the middle of the screen. Sorry for the blurriness. The camera's focusing on the hose for some reason. Stock sensor, it's just routed up around here, long enough wire to get down there, matches up, connects great. The coolant temperature sensor that sits back in here underneath your intake manifold, more, on this side, the passenger side of your block, or your passenger side of your head, it has the same amount of conductors, but the plugs don't match with Holley's harness. I went ahead and just cut the harness, the stock motor harness, and mated it up with Holley's harness. Like I said, it has the same amount of conductors, same colors. It's literally just the connector is a different size. I haven't verified that temperature reads the same as my aftermarket temperature sensor gauge in there, but I do get a temperature reading. I just haven't compared them. So you may have to end up switching that temperature sensor out for the 2-valve motor's temperature sensor. I can't comment on that directly, but that's what I'm running right now. It's plugging a hole. It's getting a reading. That's what I got. Your alternator. So this is classified as a 3-wire alternator, which I don't understand because it has 4 wires coming off from it. So for your 4 wires, you have your main battery wire, your charging wire, going back to my distribution. Yes, I know the cover is ugly. It's on there for racing purposes. This is not a street legal car. I don't drive this on the road. Anyway, your main battery harness, your big chunky wire, that goes back there to your battery, where your battery would be. Mine's in the rear. On your connector, you have a 1, 2, and 3 pin. Pin 3 needs constant 12 volts. So you can either hook it straight up to the back of your alternator where this guy is landing, or you can just run it out to your battery or your distribution point like I have. Pin 1, I've been told, you run 12 volts to off a switch point in series with a 470 or 490 ohm resistor. The reason it wants it switched, I'm not sure, because ultimately it did not work for me. I tried to do the resistor thing, it did not work. What did work for me was pin 2, I shorted out, and it actually kicked the alternator on. So I have a switchboard in the car, we'll go look at in a minute, and all I do after I've started, I give that thing a quick flick it off, and alternator charges at 13.6 volts, runs great. Haven't had a dead battery yet. So, I believe I've covered everything. I've went over, again, stock coils, stock injectors. You have your intake air temperature sensor, your throttle position sensor, crank sensor, cam sensor, and of course your cooling temperature sensor. And we've got our alternator hooked up. So let's go ahead and jump in the car and go through the handheld programmer. All right, so we're sitting inside my car here. I have my lovely little label maker I put on there. So you see I got my accessory on, my alternator, my fans, and then go time, of course. I got my little handheld device set up there, and I got the main Terminator X down there with my drivers for my coil packs up towards the front. And then, of course, some gauges for just various monitoring. Okay, so once you've gotten everything hooked up, that's when you officially plug in the larger gauge wire into the back of your Terminator X, and you can power it on. So I'm going to go ahead and keep my AC on. You get the awesome LEDs down here, which are very helpful for diagnosing things before startup and during running time, honestly. Okay, so this is not the screen you will get when you first start it up. You'll probably get a screen that says something about doing auto throttle position sensor setup. So we're going to go ahead and scroll, give her that screen. Okay, we're going to go home. All right, so what you're first want to do is you're going to want to go through your wizards. And we're going through, sorry for the focus, apparently my camera still can't pick this up properly. Let me try and adjust that a little bit. Oh, but then it was like, let me change the color for you. All right, well, you're just going to have to go off what I'm saying. All right, so we're going to go over here to this wand. And this is the beginning of your map build for your car, for your first startup. These are base settings that are in the car, or that come with this Holley Terminator setup. Of course, you can upload a bunch of them, change them, do whatever you want, get your laptop out and do your special things. But for first startup purposes, this is what we're going with. All right, so we're selecting injector type. It says in the booklet, if you don't know what it is, leave it on the MPFI. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it there and click next. All right, select system type. So we're obviously running a Ford mod motor. Ford mod motor. Click next. No, I want the mod motor. Definitely use your stylus because trying to use your finger on this is an absolute nightmare. Oops, it skipped a step. Okay, So obviously it knows, hey, you're running a mod motor. You already have 8 cylinders, so it pre-selects it. Click next. There's only one firing order for these type of motors, and it also happens to be the same for your 5.0 and your 351 Windsor. So we're just going to go ahead and leave that on there. Click next. Now it's going to ask, okay, what size is this Ford motor? Because they make the 5.4 and the 4.6. So I went ahead and let's go ahead and use metric system. Click next. And then it wants you to input that information. You can use this dial. You can click the buttons on the top. You can click in the menu field and type it in. So we're just going to go like this. Ooh, we went a little bit big. Put a bigger motor in. Why not? Let's get that 4.6. There's 4.6. All right, now we hit next. Come on. Okay, target idle speed. The target idle speed for these motors from factory is about 450. Geez, I'm seeing 400, so I'm saying 450. It's about 750. So we're going to go ahead and drag this guy over. And I'm gonna put about 780, I think, in there. 780. Okay. Click next. No. I don't want that. Save. Next. Thank you. All right. This is where you can adjust your cams. I'm running stock cams, so I'm leaving it at the below 235 degree duration. Clicking next. All right. So this is where some conflict comes in. So that bottom one, COP, stands for coil over plug, which is what this motor is. But every time I picked that one, the car would never fire. I did some research, came back, and found out that someone did the waste spark coils. They had a heavily built motor, but it started under that. So I said, oh, what the hell? Did it? Car started first crank. So I'm leaving it on the waste spark coils, which, like I said, the booklet says it's supposed to be coil over plugs, but I left it on that and it started. So that's what I'm going to go with. We're still going forward here. Next. All right, now we're looking at your fuel pressure. When I looked this up, it says that the Mazda fuel pump pumps at 60 psi, and I'm still running the stock Mazda fuel pump. So I'm going to go ahead and select 60 psi. Click next. All right, now it wants your injectors. Mine are stock injectors, so I'm going OEM. Next. Now it says, okay, let's go ahead and find those injectors. I searched through this thing for a good long while, and I also tried to look them up to see what they were, and got basically nowhere. So I said, okay, there's a Ford one, because I know they're not colored, they're not color coordinated. So I selected this bottom Ford one, this BR329F58 or 93A. Select that guy. Next. All right, power adder. I don't have nitrous. I'm not running a turbo. I'm not running a supercharger. At least not yet, right? So I click next. Now it asks for what type of map sensor you're using. I'm using the internal 1-bar map sensor. I forgot to point that out. So we'll look up here real quick. So that green hose coming off the left side of my motor is coming back through an adapter and plugs in to the back. That little blue wire in there, you see that red going through a clear piece, then to a blue? That's your internal 1-bar map sensor. That is what I used. I used the internal sensor on this motor, on this ECU. So I leave it at internal. Click next. No, I want the internal. Thank you. Screen is very touchy. I see why people use laptops. Click next. At this point, it says, hey, here's your map. This is what it's called. Let's go ahead and install it. You can click start, run through the process. So let's go ahead and do that. It's going to go through the process. Uploading. Hey, look at that. Please cycle ignition, complete the operation. Oh, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and kill it, bring it back. Fuel pump kicks on. It goes through its normal boot up process. At this point, you would go through your wizard again. Go to your TPS auto set and read. It says make sure ignition is on and engine is not started. Okay, I want to start. Thank you. Slowly press the pedal to the floor and then slowly release. Do this twice. Okay. TPS center was not successful. Oh, you mean I have to do it now? Okay. So let's go ahead. That was 1 press. That was 2 press. Let's go ahead and go through that again because I don't think it registered. Start. It's not on. Press it twice. Okay. One press. Two press. Click next. Oh, look at that. TPS auto setup was successful. Awesome. Thank you. Done. Okay. Now is where we get to start having fun. Let's go ahead and go to our monitor. Go to monitors. And we want to click this beautiful color one over here for initial startup. All right. So now we're looking at some things here. So these are your values that you can kind of see there. I'm sorry, again, the focus is not great on this camera apparently. Doesn't matter if I get further away or closer apparently. I don't know. Okay. The biggest thing you want to pay attention to is your TPS. So right now you see it says 0%. I'm going to go ahead and hit the throttle. You see the value changes. You want to make sure you can push it all the way to the floor and you're at 100%. And when you're all the way off it, you're at 0%. That is huge. Battery's good. IAC position. It thinks it's in there, but it's actually not. But these values are good enough to give our car our first start. So let's go ahead and do so. And this thing is a little cold-blooded, so it might take me a little bit. So let's go ahead. Go time, baby.